I remember my first days at school. Not for the lessons, not for the friends I made, but for the sound. The hallways were alive in a way I didn't understand. Chairs scraping against the floor, shoes clattering, voices rising and colliding like waves. Every day, the noise came before I even reached the classroom. I learned very early that school demanded something I wasn't naturally equipped to give. It demanded that I be seen. It demanded that I speak quickly, loudly, confidently. I wasn't loud. I wasn't confident. I was quiet, observant, thoughtful. And in that noise, I often felt invisible. It wasn't that I didn't want to participate. I wanted to, in my own way, but speaking out loud felt heavier than keeping my thoughts inside. The world moved faster than my words could follow. My name is Noah. I was 10 years old when I realized something important about myself. The world rewarded the visible and the loud. I had a mind that was constantly active. Ideas, stories, observations, all moving in layers inside my head. But my voice, when I tried it out, felt too small for the space I was in. I remember teachers describing me as well-behaved or polite. Adults called me easygoing. Classmates said I was shy. In truth, I was none of these things exactly. I was simply quiet, and the world didn't know what to do with quiet. I didn't mind being quiet most of the time. It allowed me to notice details others missed. It allowed me to think about things carefully. But sometimes, it was lonely. In the classroom, questions floated through the air like birds in flight. Some children reached for them instantly. Their hands shot up before the question was fully asked. Some shouted the answers without hesitation. I waited. I always waited. I replayed the question in my mind. I considered every angle. I thought about the answer carefully, weighing it, turning it over, seeing it from all sides. By the time I was ready to speak, someone else had already answered. Often it was correct, sometimes it was not, but it didn't matter. The opportunity had passed. And so I stayed seated, still, quiet, invisible. Silence can be misread. Classmates thought I was shy. Some thought I was disinterested. A few thought I was slow. Once, a boy asked me, "Why don't you ever talk?" I wanted to say, "I talk all the time, just not out loud," but the words got trapped inside. Teachers sometimes overlooked me, not maliciously, but out of habit. They called on students who filled the room easily, whose voices carried over the rest. I didn't mind entirely. I was learning the patterns. I was learning how to move without being noticed. There were times when I wanted to disappear completely. During group activities, when friends formed clusters quickly, I was often left standing alone. Not because I wasn't wanted, because I was quiet. I learned to make myself smaller, to blend into the background, to observe without being observed. It wasn't taught to me, it was absorbed. I learned to move like a shadow, careful, measured, unnoticed. My real world existed in my notebook. Between the lines of homework, I wrote stories. Stories of people who were thoughtful, who felt deeply, who observed carefully. People like me. I replayed conversations that never happened. I imagined moments that might come. I rehearsed answers to questions I never got to ask. In my notebook, I was free. In my mind, I was heard. No one interrupted me there. No one laughed at my thoughts. No one misunderstood. One day, my teacher asked me to read aloud. My heart raced before my mouth could respond. I stood slowly. The room did not quiet completely. It never did. I read. My voice was soft, quieter than I expected, but it was my voice. Some classmates glanced up. Some didn't notice at all. The teacher nodded once, and that nod, that stayed with me longer than any praise could. It was the first time I felt the weight of being acknowledged without changing myself. I walked home alone most days. The noise of school faded with each step. By the time I reached my street, the world felt manageable again. I reflected on moments I wished I had spoken up, on answers I had never shared. Not with regret, but with curiosity. I noticed things most children overlooked. A bird landing on a fence, a pattern of clouds in the sky, the way sunlight made the leaves glow golden. These were my observations, my quiet victories, my way of moving through a world that demanded noise. Sometimes a child would notice me. A glance, a smile, a question asked softly. Those small connections were precious, even fleeting ones. I began to understand that friendships weren't about loud conversations. They were about understanding, about recognizing the quiet presence of someone else. Slowly, I learned to respond in my own way. Not flashy, not immediate, but steady, genuine. At night, I would write in my notebook again, replaying the day, the sounds, the silences. I wrote about what I felt, what I noticed, what I wanted to say but didn't. I learned that being quiet didn't mean being empty. My mind was full of worlds, observations, and stories. My heart was full of emotions that didn't always have words. Silence is not absence. It is presence, in a different form. And in that realization, I began to feel strength. Strength in thought, strength in observation, strength in being myself. I didn't know it then, but this was the beginning of my story, the story of how I would move through the world, quietly, thoughtfully, carefully. I wasn't invisible. I was simply silent in a world that rewarded noise. This is Noah, and this is where his journey begins.